I've been into fighting games for quite a while now, but the thing that truly made me fall in love with the genre was going to my very first tournament at EVO 2019. I didn't get very far, but the thrill of competition, the sense of community that was formed by talking and competing with fellow fighting game fans, and the hype moments that organically emerged from watching the best in the world do what they do best, all made for an experience that I knew I had to revisit every year from that point on.
It's Goichi, your Dragon Ball FighterZ 2019 EVO champion!
This year though, I wanted to document that experience and share it, to show the work that goes into trying to be competitive at a fighting game, even for someone who doesn't consider themselves to be a quote-unquote pro, to put a lens on what happens beyond the main stage at EVO, and ultimately, show people the love of fighting games. Also, selfishly, I want a way to motivate myself to try and break through my own barrier of going 3-2 in Guilty Gear Strive. And so, hello, my name is Mitchell Saltzman, and this is my Road to EVO Video Diary, Episode 1. So, first things first, I gotta get back up to speed in Guilty Gear Strive. For the last few months, my brain has been all about Street Fighter 6, with everything relating to the review, to trying to grind up the ranks, and to just playing a new and exciting fighting game with my group of friends. The thing is, because I did the review for Street Fighter 6 and received an early copy of the game, I am officially, by Capcom, disqualified from participating in EVO for Street Fighter 6, so it's Guilty Gear Strive or bust for me. All that said, I had a ton of rust to shake off. And after grinding ranked matchmaking for a day and getting knocked down to floor 9 a handful of times, it was clear that I had lost something in my time away from the game. And if I truly wanted to compete at the highest level and not get blown up, I needed to find out where those holes were. So I decided to do something that I've never done before. Get a coach. Enter Diaphone, one of my favorite fighting game content creators and a person that I credit massively with not just improving my own skill through his videos, but also my mentality. He was gracious enough to give me an hour of his time to review a handful of my matches, identify some weaknesses, and give me some pointers on how to correct them. And so, let's move on to the crux of this video. Here are 5 things I learned from a pro fighting game player.
So I'd like to focus on some defensive situations once we go through all of this, because I think there's a few options you're not really using on defense.
One of the first things that Diaphone noticed was that I wasn't making use of some of my best defensive options. Faultless defense, for example, is a defensive technique that creates a barrier that negates chip damage and pushes your opponent back slightly when they hit it, at the cost of some of your tension meter. Because I wasn't really using it at the right times or against the right moves, players were able to run pressure game plans that are just incredibly hard to stop. He also recommended that I incorporate more backdashes on defense.
You don't want to do all the time, but it is good to do on occasion, right? Because a lot of people get lazy and they don't option select their safe jumps, or they mistime things, especially in a tournament setting, because let's be real, we flew out to Vegas, we might have jet lag, we might have lack of sleep, we might have all these other factors, we might be nervous, right? So in those kind of situations, backdash becomes better. What can I say?
Backdashes have about 5 or 6 frames of invulnerability on their startup, and so they can very often completely avoid certain melee attacks that are either poorly timed or don't have very many active frames, as well as throws. They still get blown up by attacks with lengthy active frames, but if you have the right read, their reward is immense. Number 2, bursts earlier. In several of my matches against this chip, he successfully does what's called a burst bait on me, which is a combo designed to make me use my limited use get out of jail free card called a burst. Only they're prepared to block it if the burst happens. It feels bad when you get burst baited. You waste your burst, you're in a position to get punished hard, and worst of all, you lose your entire burst gauge, making it so that you almost certainly won't get your burst back next round. Diaphone's recommendation was to use burst earlier as a general note, and to make sure that I'm using my burst against moves where the burst is guaranteed.
If you bursted properly that match, you have had burst here, which means that you could have bursted like right here if you wanted. Means you could have bursted like whatever the follow-up was before you got wall broken. Like you could have bursted before you got the 50.
By using the burst earlier, I get it back sooner, take less damage from the combo, and reduce the likelihood of getting burst baited. The exception to this is in the final round of the match, since there's no getting your burst back after that.
How many Geo drill kicks 236K were done in those 5 matches?
I don't think that many. Did I do a lot?
0.
0? Yeah,
Did
okay.
0.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't do very many. This was a very character-specific note, but Diaphone noticed that I wasn't using Giovanna's Travao special move, which most people just call Drill because of its visual similarity to Cammy's Cannon Drill in Street Fighter. It's a move that I've always viewed as very risky, because of its long startup and its vulnerability to every character's universal anti-air attack, 6P. But it's an incredibly useful move for my character Giovanna, as it gets her in the range she wants to be in, crushes through projectiles, and crucially, leaves her at a +4 frame advantage on block, allowing me to take my turn back and threaten with either a block string or a dash-up throw.
There's a good rule of thumb. Justin Wong always had this rule, and I've always like stuck by it myself, which is always assume your opponent's an idiot until they prove otherwise, right? And I think with Geo, that means doing 236k in pressure and in neutral and seeing if they can deal with it, right? And unless you actually do it, then you won't know for sure if they can actually deal with it.
Number 4, option selects on safe jumps. Okay, so we're getting into some deeper fighting game terminology here, so I'm gonna do my best to explain it. A key part of Giovanna's game plan is utilizing what's known as safe jumps to continue her pressure after a knockdown. Basically, it's a move that's specifically timed so that if an opponent just blocks when they get up, I will hit their block as normal and can continue my pressure. But if the opponent tries to use an invincible reversal, like an overdrive or a Dragon Punch style move, I will hit the ground in time to block it. What I always thought was a weakness of this technique was that people could backdash on wake up to avoid blocking the safe jump and then punish me before I was able to do anything about it. But Diaphone taught me an option select that would cover backdashes, making it so that I didn't have to do weird and risky reads, like safe jumping in and then backdashing out.
But basically what I'm doing, I'm pressing JH and then I'm pressing S. So it looks like this. You see how this comes out if I whiff a normal? But if you just block, nothing happens, right? Like the S doesn't come out.
Okay, there we go.
That you did it, but it is 2S, but that still works, right?
One final thing that Diaphone was able to pick up from watching my replays is that my opponents were pretty disrespectful on defense. They would mash out of my block strings or find spots to either backdash or jump to escape. To that end, he brought up the concept of layering my offense, which in fighting game terms basically means that you start off with the option that has the highest success rate of beating common defensive options. And if your opponent shows that they can respond correctly to that layer, then you move on to layer 2, then layer 3, etc.
So like, in my opinion, layer 1 should always be something that like beats the majority of like nutty shit opponents want to do, right? So something like a 5S and the 2S will beat like all the jumping and the mashing throw that the Mei player was doing, as opposed to going for like a backdash, like a dash forward, dash back, or jump in, backdash, that sort of thing, which is like designed to beat specific options, but it loses to most options, if that makes sense.
And those were the 5 things I took away from my session with Diaphone. Needless to say, I was eager to put the lessons to the test, and sure enough, despite having struggled to remain in floor 10 the night before, as soon as I started playing, I went on a tear, winning 7 games in a row, bringing me back up to the Celestial Challenge, which I proceeded to lose against Chip. So, there's still work to do on that front. But not too long after, I managed to work my way back up to the challenge, and this time, finally got back to Celestial. Of course, I had to ask Diaphone to give me his honest thoughts on my chances of accomplishing my goal of getting out of pools at EVO.
Oh, easily. Yeah. I think depends how much you practice, right? It depends on a good amount of like bracket luck. Like, let's be real. Like you could you could play like, you could get 2 DQs and then you could play against like 2 people that just play this game casually and then you already beat people, right? So I'm not gonna lie, some of it's gonna come down to luck. But I think if you play your cards right, you practice and you get everything well defined, I think you can make it out of your pool at EVO.
My next step, as Diaphone suggested, is to enter an online tournament to get some tourney level experience under my belt, and that's what I'll be covering next week in this Road to EVO diary. Till then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.